Standardized testing is an unfair way to measure the abilities of students. These high stakes tests force teachers to teach the tests which only narrow an already thin curriculum. The inherent biases involved with standardized tests being forced into our education surely does not effectively assess college preparedness and should not be considered in regard to admittance to colleges. The, ideas, the idea of standardized testing is to remove subjective factors from the assessment. Yet, there are many factors of the standardized test, much like those imposed on the SAT, that are biased towards those exposed to higher education more frequently. Some may say that students from different cultures have the exact same opportunity to understand and prepare for the material on standardized tests. I find that statement to be borderline outrageous. This claim isn't warranted simply because family income alone is a highly important factor that affects students' ability to perform on the SAT. Ronald Coleman of Georgetown University's Department of Law in a study found that the theoretical approach taken in the present study assumes that group differences in IQ that are not accompanied by group differences in information processing ability are due to group differences in access to information. This means that access to test preparation is an absolute way to improve a student's score. Unfortunately, test preparation is just expensive enough that many cultures throughout our society simply cannot afford it. This bias alone can make or break a student's acceptance into college. While standardized tests may guarantee that every student has been exposed to and tested on the same concept, does it guarantee that every student understands the material? I don't think so. The objectivity of standardized tests is intended to remove bias, but in fact it heavily reinforces it. One of the most notable flaws of the SAT is the lack of a creativity section. Professor James Kaufman from the California State University at San Bernardino says that using a creativity section in the SAT will reduce biases. He also says that some abilities are more relevant in some cultural settings than others. Thus, the unmeasured abilities that may have a different impact in understanding people's abilities based on their culture. Such a discrepancy would create a bias in the assessment process. To use a cross-discipline example, imagine a test of visual artistic ability that only looked at watercolors. The artistry test would miss many other core components such as sketching or drawing and would over-reward people who were especially good at watercoloring. In doing so, this test would have an inherent implicit bias against people who were colorblind. So in other words, the SAT only tests a student's ability to remember things that they've been taught. It places zero emphasis on one's ability to create, which is a most valuable trait in regards to intelligence. You might go on to say that making the standardized test more culturally diverse and less standardized will only make the test easier, thus taking credit away from those who worked hard to excel. I say, by doing this, a more diverse test creates an opportunity for every student to prepare him or herself and shine. Professor Robert Sternberg from Tufts University finds that success in life depends on a much broader range of abilities that conventional tests simply can't measure. For example, memory and analytical abilities may be sufficient to produce A's in high school science courses, but they probably aren't sufficient to produce outstanding research because research requires creativity when generating ideas and theories. Sternberg also says that as teaching improves, university teachers will emphasize more of the creative and practical skills needed for success in school and life. Throughout middle school, I was told how important it was that I understand the Pythagorean theorem so I could do well in the 8th grade math assessment. At such a young age, my peers and I alike were placed under such great pressure to grasp something that becomes rather irrelevant as soon as you are done with the test. Standardized tests promote the same kind of unnecessary pressure because the student's ability is not shown when they simply regurgitate things that have been overtaught to them. I believe that by diversifying the SAT or simply even eliminating it from the admissions process, a more true assessment of college readiness is guaranteed. By allowing our education system to place such great emphasis on high-stakes tests, we allow all sorts of biases that remain for our youth that will inhibit their ability to express their true creativity and aptitude. The SAT is unfair, it is biased, and it does not truly test our ability to